So, thank you for joining me today. My name is Kelly, and we're going to be focusing on the hips this morning. Before we start practice, just a point of note: don't ever try and push yourself into a pose if it doesn't feel right in your body. Make modifications where necessary. I will offer some of those as we go as well. But just enjoy this practice. Yeah. So let's start by just bringing ourselves onto our mat or wherever we are and taking 3 breaths together just to center ourselves. So finding that comfortable seated position, cross-legged, however feels good for you. And let's inhale through the nose and sigh out through the mouth. 2 more times, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Last one, really deep in through the nose. Big sigh. Give those shoulders a little wiggle. I'm going to start waking the body up. And now, because we're working into the hips this morning, I just want us to check in. So from our seated position, just walk those hands forward as far as feels comfortable until you start feeling a little bit of something going on in the hips there. And we're doing this so then we can check in at the end of practice to see if there's any difference in the movements that we've done. So just taking a little rock from side to side, perhaps we take the hands over to the left. A couple of breaths here. And then send those hands over to the right. Notice any differences, whether you feel a little bit more open on one side than the other. And then slowly walk those hands back. And let's inhale those arms up. We'll just do a few little stretches on the side body. Send the right hand down and sweep the left arm up and over. Just to a point where we start to feel a stretch in the side of the body. Try and keep the chest open to the ceiling. Nice deep breaths, don't ever lose that breath. And on your next inhale, send the hand back up. Right hand reaching the left, and then send the left hand down, right arm sweeps up and over. 2 more breaths here. And then we're inhaling to come back up. Drop those hands down. We'll take a gentle spinal twist to the right. So take the left hand on top of the right knee. Right hand becomes behind the body. Inhale, stretch the body nice and long. And then as you exhale, twist, looking over the right shoulder, just easing the body round with the palm of that left hand on top of the right knee. Breathing into the belly here. And then gently releasing, coming back round to the front. Taking a twist to the left now. So take the left hand behind the body, right hand goes on top of the left knee. Inhale, stretching the body nice and long. And exhaling to twist, look over the left shoulder now. Gently easing that twist a little bit more with the palm of that right hand on top of the left knee. 2 more breaths. And then gently releasing, coming back to center. And I want you to find a tabletop position. So knees are about under the hips, hands under the shoulders, nice neutral spine to start with. And then we're going to be working to our cat-cow pose. So as we inhale, we'll drop the belly down, nice back bend, lift the chest, lift the head into our cow. And then as we exhale, we round the spine, pressing away into the mat, dropping the head down, and that's our cat. And then I want you to flow with the breath. So as you inhale, dropping the belly down again, lifting the chest, lifting the head into cow, exhaling into cat. And flow with your own breath here. Try to make that movement really fluid, waking up that spine. And then feel free to take any other little movement you might want. You might like a little rotation in the hips. Maybe a few neck rolls. Any movement that feels good in the body. Couple more breaths here. And on your next exhale, coming back, find a neutral spine. I want you to take your left arm forward, stretch it nice and long, and take the opposing leg, so you're sending the right leg back. Finding a little balance and stability on that right hand pressing in that left leg on the other side. Now holding here for a moment, pull the big toe towards the body, get a little bit more engagement in that right leg. And then release that foot, bend that right knee, send the left hand behind the body and grab hold of the right foot. And then we're going to encourage a bit of a deeper back bend by pressing the foot into the hand, continuing to look forward. Keep the gaze nice and steady to keep that balance. Now we're taking a couple of breaths here. Really pressing into that hand. Firing up that leg. And then release down. And then we'll go for the other side. So sending the right hand forward, stretching that right arm nice and long. Send the left leg back, finding that balance. Again, pulling the big toe towards the body, dorsiflexing the foot, finding a little bit of engagement in that left leg. Finding the breath. And then releasing that foot, taking a bend in the left knee. Send the right hand round and back, grabbing the left foot, and then pressing the left foot into the hand, encouraging a slightly deeper back bend, whilst continuing to find that balance. Don't worry if you're a bit wobbly here. Our balance can be a little bit challenged in the morning sometimes. It's perfectly fine. And then release that hand, coming back into the tabletop. And let's just take a nice, gentle threading the needle. So taking the left hand and feeding it between the right hand and the right leg. You're going to sweep that left arm all the way across until you get to the point where the shoulder wants to come down and you're resting on the mat. Rest the shoulder down, rest the head. And you can stay here, or you can send the right arm up to the ceiling. Again, option to stay here, or you can take a bind. So taking this right hand, sweeping it behind the back, and grabbing the top of the left thigh. And that's just giving us a slightly deeper back bend. We're not staying here for too long. Just a couple of breaths. Just warming the body up a little. Now release that bind. If you've taken it, bring the right hand back to the mat. Use that hand to press yourself back up into a tabletop. And we'll take threading the needle on the other side. So taking the right hand through the left arm and the left leg, sweeping it across, dropping that shoulder down, resting the forehead. Either staying there or raising this left arm up, sweeping the left arm behind the body and grabbing the top of that right thigh. Finding that breath again. And then releasing the bind, if you've taken it, sweeping that arm round, pressing into the mat with the left hand, coming back into that tabletop. And let's tuck the toes. We're lifting the hips and pressing into our first downward facing dog. Don't worry about keeping the legs straight. Much better to have nice bent knees and we get more length in that spine. So really pressing the mat away. If you're finding yourself up here, you're putting a little too much pressure into the wrists. What you want is that movement of pushing back, sending the weight into the heels. Head nice and loose. Make this dog nice and mobile, padding the feet out, one to the other. Find the breath here. Keep working into those feet. And then we'll find a little bit of stillness. 2 more breaths. And then we're looking forward and we're sending this right leg ahead of the mat with our right and left hand at either side, coming into a runner's lunge. Just take a moment there to find your pose. You might want to make sure that the feet are a little bit on train tracks rather than dead in line, just to give yourself a little bit more balance. And then we're dropping the back left knee. Untuck the toes and then sweep the arms up, coming into a nice low lunge. And really sink into that right leg. Check that you've got nice length in the legs, so make sure the legs are nice split apart. And we'll take a few breaths here. If sending the hands up feels a little bit too intense, then you can have those hands on the hips, whatever works for you this morning. Breathing into that pose, feeling that left hip flexor nice and stretched. And then wherever your hands are, sending the hands down to the mat. So I want you to walk that right foot out to the edge of your mat, bringing the right hand inside that right leg. So your right foot is on the edge, so you've got a slightly wider stance as we come into our lizard pose. Now you have the option here to stay up on the hands. If you have the range, then you can try and come down to the forearms, but don't force it. You may find that as we stay in here a little bit longer, you have the ability to come down after we've taken a few more breaths here. I just want you to sit there for a little while. Breathe into that pose. Notice any sensations in the body. Just letting the hips relax down. Start opening up. And as you come down the forearms, come back up onto the hands. And I want us to just put the weight in the left arm, and we're going to gently press the right palm to the inside of that right knee. Just gently easing that leg out to the side. We're just exploring that movement, seeing what that changes to the stretch. We'll take a couple of more breaths then. Nice. And then release that hand. Bring the hand back to the mat, gently pulling that leg forward again. And now from here, instead of pigeon pose this morning, I want to take a slightly different stance. So walk this right foot over to the other side of the mat, and then drop the leg down. So your right shin is in line with the top of your mat. And then we're pulling the left leg round so the shin is in line with the long edge of the mat. So you have this sort of 90-degree angle in both legs. And from here, I want us to explore where the hips are at again. So we're just going to gently ease the chest forward over this right leg. And as we calm down, it has the same kind of sensation as a pigeon pose, but without that left leg stretched out. And it'll make more sense in a minute when I get some work into that left leg. But for right now, we're just sending the chest forward, coming down to the forearms if that's available to you. And we're just taking a few breaths here. But I want you to make this movement a little bit mobile. So making a few sort of sweeping motions Just easing into that leg. Can you encourage the depth into that right leg, into that hip? Maybe send the weight over to the right hand side a little. Notice how that changes the stretch. And then coming over to the left and seeing how you get a little bit of engagement in that right hamstring now. And then bring it back over so the chest is just resting gently over the right leg. And we're taking a couple more breaths here. Nice. Coming up slightly onto the hands, we're going to get a bit of engagement in this back left leg. I'm going to switch around so you can see. I realise that might be a bit tricky for you. So our left leg is back here, our right leg is in the front. And what I want you to do with this left leg now, coming up onto the hands, is just bring that foot off of the mat. So we're going to pulse there for 5. So we're just raising. You might not be very much of a raise that the foot comes from the mat, but we're just encouraging a bit of internal rotation in that hip. A little bit of engagement. And we're just taking a few pulses. And on the 5th one, I want you to keep it there, really pulling that foot up. This might get your obliques working too. It does for me this time of the way. Just holding there and releasing down. Good. Okay. So from here, we're now going to just stretch that left foot out, tuck that back toe, and magically come back into that downward facing dog. So find your way back into the downward facing dog. Just take a moment to check in with that right leg. See if it feels any different to the left from when we first found this downward facing dog. And then just send that right leg up nice and high. Bend the knee and stack that right hip. Open the hip up. And relax that right leg over the left. Maybe make some circles with the knee. Just easing it out after having worked into it a little bit then. Good. And then coming back to our downward facing dog. And then we're looking forward and sending the left leg ahead of us now. Finding that runner's lunge. Again, just taking a little bit of time to get the nice length in our stance. And then we're dropping the right knee, untucking the toes, and coming into that low lunge again, but on the left side, raising the arms up. Sinking nice and deeply into that left leg. Again, if you feel, take the hands to the hips. Taking a few breaths here. Allowing the body to sink down. And take a moment just to notice whether this feels any different from the other side. Good. And dropping the hands down to the mat. Walking the left foot out, bringing that left arm to the inside of the left foot, walking that left leg out to the side of the mat, and finding our lizard pose. Breathing here for a few moments. Again, if you want to come down to the forearms at this stage for a deeper stretch, then you can go ahead and do that. Whatever feels good in the body for you. And then coming up onto the hands, if we're not already there, taking the left hand to the inside of the left knee, and just easing that leg out to the left side. Noticing how that changes the stretch. Where the engagement changes, but still actively sinking those hips forward. Great. Then release that hand, bringing the hand back to the mat. And as we did on the other side, start walking that left foot over to the other side of the mat to allow you to drop that left leg down. So that left shin now comes in line with the short edge of the mat. Our right leg just pops up a little bit to allow our right shin to be in line with the long edge of the mat. Our sort of 90-degree angle leg pose. I'm sure that's not the technical term for it. And then from here, we're sending the chest forward over that left leg, working into that left hip now. Coming down, and again, keeping that movement a little active, perhaps swaying from side to side, allowing us to get a little bit more depth. Feel free to explore that stretch. Sending the body over to the right and to the left. Making sure we don't lose that breath. Keep breathing into the stretch. And then when you find that sweet spot, just holding for a moment. Allowing the body to relax down over that left leg. Gently working into that hip, that glute, or left side. A couple of more breaths here. And then raising up onto the hands. We're going to get that engagement in that back right leg. So pulling the big toes towards the body, get dorsiflexing that foot. And then we're just raising that foot off the mat. Doing that little pulsing movement, getting a little bit of engagement. You can pop the hand on that right hip so you can feel that rotation happening. Just getting a little bit of active engagement in that right leg. Make sure it's not just hanging out at the back there. Good. And then the next one, just hold it for a bit, keep curling that foot up. And then dropping that foot down. And from here, this has worked out quite well, we're just going to bring the legs forward. Just ahead of us. Now I want you to sit back on the hands and just gently windscreen wiper out the hips. Sending the knees from side to side. Really nice. And then when you come back to center, bring the feet in a little bit, send the feet over to the right, and then drop the legs down. So we find that kind of stag position in the legs. I'm just going to sit back on the mat, so my knees stay on there. And with the movement we're going to be working into now, we're going to be coming up onto the knees. So it's this kind of motion. So just fiddle around until you get that nice feeling of the legs in stag. And from here, we're going to take 5 of these movements. So send the hands forward, inhale, coming up onto the knees, really pressing the hips forward, and we're doing 5 of these. So then slowly with control, sit the bum back down, and then inhale back up, and we're exhaling back down. Inhaling up, actively pressing the hips forward, exhaling down. 2 more. And on the last one now, as we lift up, instead of coming all the way down, we're going to hover here. So really press the legs into the mat. Keep firing up through that movement. And then sitting down. Really nice. And then from here, we want to swap over from the other side. So you can magically twist those legs around, finding that stag position on the other side, making the adjustments that you need to. And we'll go straight into those 5 pulses again. Sending the hands forward, inhaling to come up, pressing the hips forward, exhaling to come back down. Inhaling up, and exhaling down. Inhaling up, Exhaling down. Inhaling up. And exhaling down. Last one when we come up. Taking a moment before slowly sinking down, hovering the bum above the mat. For a couple of breaths, pressing the legs into the mat. And then releasing the body down. Sweep the legs forward. So we're facing the top of the mat. Take a nice deep bend in the knees. And let's take a gentle forward fold over the legs. Sweep the hands underneath the legs and just drop the head forward just for a moment. Relax the body here. Take a few breaths. And then gently releasing the hands, we might want to scooch forward a little bit. As we send the hands forward and we're coming down onto our backs, onto the mat. And as we find ourselves on the mat, keep the feet flat to the mat, bring them close to the body. And then we're going to take our right foot and place the ankle just below the knee on top of that left leg. So you have the option to stay here in a slightly more passive stretch, easing that right leg out to the side. Or we can take the hands, clasping behind the back of the left knee, and then pulling that left leg, encouraging that stretch towards the body. And you can either stay up here or you can release the head down. I like to pull the big toes towards the knees again, dorsiflexing the feet to get a little bit more engagement rather than having floppy feet, but play around with that movement, see what feels good for you. We're just taking a few breaths here. Release the hands, release that left foot down, take the right leg off of the left, and we'll go for the other side. So taking the left foot on top of the right knee, just below the right knee. Staying here in that passive stretch, or taking the clasp behind the back of that right knee, pulling the leg towards the body. And then we're taking a few breaths. Starting to slow things down now. Final few stretches. And releasing the hands, drop that right foot down. Take the left foot down. Take the 2 feet, soles of the feet together. And we're coming into goddess pose. Let the knees drop out to the side. If this feels a bit too intense, then grab a couple of books or pillows, put them underneath the knees. Otherwise, really pulling the feet towards the body. And then you have the option to take the hands above the head, grabbing each elbow, and just relax here. You might want to butterfly the knees out, get a little bit of movement. Starting to release now. And then release the hands if you've taken them above the head. Use the hands to just bring the knees together. And then stretch out the legs, coming into our final resting pose, into our Shavasana. Palms facing up, a little away from the body. Fully relax here. Take a nice big inhale through the nose. And a big sigh, exhale through the mouth. And just take a few moments to allow the body to just absorb the movements that we've taken it through this morning. Try and release any tension you still might be holding in the body. And just doing a quick body scan, releasing from the toes all the way to the head. The toes, the ankles, the calves, backs of the knees, the thighs and the hips, all sinking heavy into the mat. Releasing the belly, the hands, the wrists, the forearms, the elbows, the backs of the arms, the shoulders, the chest, releasing the belly. Unfurrowing the brow and releasing the jaw. All the tiny muscles around the eyes. And just finding a little bit of stillness. And then slowly start wiggling the toes, wiggling the fingers. Take a nice big stretch as if you're just waking up. And then slowly making your way back up to a seated position as we started practice this morning. Just taking a moment to check back in. Let's walk those hands forward, see if the hips feel any different to when we started. Sending the body over to the left and to the right. Hopefully you feel some difference. And then slowly walking the body back up. Just take a moment to close the eyes. Breathing into that space. Just taking a moment to thank ourselves for turning up today, taking this time to focus in our practice. And thank you for joining me. See you next time. Thanks, guys.